What is up? This is the War Dog. Welcome to another episode of Comic Book Theater with my main man, JR. What's going on, JR?
What's up, War Dog?
Not much, bro. So we got a special guest here, Josh, from the Collector's Corner, one of the admins. He's going to talk with us. Another one of the admins from the Collector's Corner, Nick. What's going on, Nick?
What's up, guys? Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, brother. Glad to have you. So, John, what are we going to talk about today, brother?
Man, as always, we've got a packed show today, guys. We've got three big topics. I think we're going to start out with the lightning rod of comics himself, Mr. Rob Leifeld. He seems to be a regular since we've started the program. Maybe one of these days we'll get War Dog to book him as a guest on the podcast since we talk about him so regularly. But looks like Rob Liefeld has predicted the collapse of DC Comics. And so one thing I will suggest to our listeners, if you're not following at Rob Liefeld on Twitter, it may in fact be too late. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a little bit. Of course, Rob, being who he is, literally says, DC Comics, you're going to drive off a cliff here real soon. Got to get my popcorn. Okay, this is posted on June 10th. And, of course, the storm rages behind that comment. Now, we all have our preferences. Donny Cates writes for Marvel. Al Ewing writes for Marvel. I know that Josh is a Valiant guy. Nikki, by the way, guys, if I refer to Nick as Nikki Shines, just know that you guys will know who I'm talking about. Anyway, Nick, you're kind of all over the place a little bit with your collection, aren't you?
Yeah, I grew up as a Marvel guy, primarily, sci-fi related comics, horror, and I got into the Avengers, and then I got into the X-Men. So, my core is really, anything mutant related. But later I got into DC and Image and a lot of the independents. But yeah, I mean, core issue here for me is Marvel mainly.
Right on. Well, and so having said that, I don't think any of us would be accused of having a DC bias by any stretch of the imagination. But also, I don't think that I think he's, of course, a lot of hyperbole and prone to exaggeration. Josh, I'm going to ask you, man, what would possess Rob Liefeld to do something like this, in your opinion?
One thing that I can say about Rob Liefeld is he's unpredictable. I have no earthly idea. I really don't. I can wait. I could guess why he would do it, but other than money, I have no clue. I mean, maybe, he said that he had an upcoming thing with Jim Lee. Some things worked out doing some characters with DC. Maybe that fell short. I don't know. I have no clue as far as why Rob Liefeld does anything that he does, to be honest with you.
I think he's one of those. Yeah, I think he's one of those guys that believes any publicity is good publicity. That's kind of the way I feel about him, as far as Rob Liefeld loves him some Rob Liefeld.
I agree with that, JR. Look what happened with Image, right? I mean, his story is, I quit. You've talked to the other founders of Image, they fired him. So what really happened, who knows? But again, it was all negative publicity, and he still persisted, well after Image. So,
that's an interesting point that Nick makes about, him speaking up and acting out after something bad happens business-wise. And that's just kind of like what I guessed, maybe something at DC didn't work out to his advantage, and maybe this was just his way of, kind of voicing his displeasure.
Well, I'll say we all know that he did that Superman cover for them. That was, I'm going to give credit where credit's due here. For Rob Liefeld, it was a good cover.
Yes, it was.
But I get the feeling that there was I get the feeling we're going to look at that in the future and find that maybe somebody either assisted him with some of that, or that he used some type of reference that he doesn't normally use, and that might have been at the insistence of DC. But I'm kind of with you in that it feels like when he starts the criticism, it's because something business went south. And yeah, he alluded to in this string of back and forths with, and I guess if you were going to follow him on Twitter, you would still get to see the absolute circus that is Rob Liefeld's Twitter feed. But the one thing I will say is it doesn't take much to get blocked by Rob Liefeld. You know, he's one of those guys who, for lack of a better term, he pulls the pin on the grenade, chucks it in the room, and then just stands there and waits. And whenever all the stuff hits the fan, he's ready to just, if you didn't agree with him, block. He doesn't mind. He'll totally do that. And look, if people are trolling you, I get it. But on the flip side, as a promoter and as a businessman, you're limiting your appeal, and you're limiting your audience at that point.
You know, it's a good point though, because he did some DC covers recently. So why would he say this about DC unless there was some kind of controversy in the mix? I mean, he did the Superman covers. He did some Justice League covers. What happened? You know, I don't know. Any ideas?
I don't really have any ideas, but I do know this. He was talking smack directly about Jim Lee in some of his tweets.
Well, he wants Jim Lee to draw X-Men again. I know that's one of the things. So he's hoping that DC might drop Jim Lee so that he can do the X-Men series.
Right. Well, I mean, he basically has said that, I mean, he kind of has hinted at, even though they're his friends, he wouldn't mind seeing all of DC's leadership there canned.
See, to me, that doesn't make sense. To me, with Jim Lee, you know, I think, you know, like what he's saying, I think him and Jim have a pretty good relationship, at least on the surface, you know, what I can see. And it doesn't make sense for him to be trashing Jim, but, you know, I think it was aimed more at some of the upper management at DC, more so than it was Jim Lee. And I know Jim Lee's up there, but maybe it could have been Jeff Johns, maybe it could have been, Dottie, who knows? It could be WB, Warner Brothers.
You know, the way I look at it is the way he portrayed it, this driving off a cliff real soon. You know, I mean, what is he trying to say? Thelma and Louise are running the show there. I mean, you got some talented people right now running DC Comics, and some people that are at a success, even though, you know, DC the movies, you know, we're DC universe, you could say it's in trouble. But the comics actually aren't really doing that bad. Sales numbers are very close to Marvel sales. DC Comics are a little bit less expensive per issue, right? But the unit numbers are higher. So, I mean, it depends on how you cut it up and look at the numbers. DC is not doing all that bad. So, you know, what exactly is he trying to do? Is he trying to compare his success versus the success of those bigwigs over at DC Comics? And if so, you know what? I'm not sure he has a leg to stand on, because we've seen some of that Major X stuff on the Marvel side lately, and some of the alternate covers he's done of some X-Men characters, and it's not up to snuff for what you would consider the best of Rob Liefeld.
Well, and I mean, look, you guys know me on social media. It's not my job to rain on people's parades, but here on the podcast, it's our podcast. I'm going to shoot it straight. Rob Liefeld is not my cup of tea. He doesn't get hardly anything anatomically correct. So whenever you say that it's not up to snuff for the best of Rob Liefeld, unfortunately, that bar is really, really low. That bar, I mean, like, I can't make my voice go low enough for that bar. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, no, like I said, he made an art of disproportion, right? We've seen chests way out, spines that could not possibly coexist with the rest of the body frames, guns without triggers, it just goes on and on and on. Zillions of pockets, right? But that's what he's made his niche.
now,
And so for some reason, people are buying it, and so he's got something. Again, it's not everybody's cup of tea. So, and for that level of what your cup of tea is lately, it's not been what that old, disproportionate standard was.
right. Well, and really, one thing I have said this, and you guys know we were talking about this pre-show. I feel like Rob Liefeld is not always as self-aware as he should be. But one thing I will give him credit for is what was it? Was it called his new character, the Pouch, or whatever it was that he made and stuff like that? There are these small little windows where he will make fun of himself, or where he will retweet a meme of him and family members and friends all standing either in water so their feet are covered or only showing from the knees up, that kind of thing. So there's occasionally that he's self-aware, but the vast majority of this guy's existence completely unaware of who he is and the talent or lack thereof that he has.
I completely disagree. And not necessarily on the talent level. I think that Rob Liefeld knows exactly what he is. I think he's completely self-aware. In the same way that, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think he's completely self-aware in the same way that Conor McGregor is in mixed martial arts. He talks himself up. He talks a big game. The guy knows exactly what he's doing. He draws attention to stuff. He's a very smart businessman. That's what I will give him credit for. And a lot of people, that debate about presidents and stuff like that, I have a common saying that there has been no man that's ever been stupid or a moron rise to the presidency. These guys all know what they're doing. They're very intelligent. And just like that, Rob Liefeld, whether you like him or not, he's one of the biggest parts of the 90s. He's as 90 as Tupac or Nirvana or, any of these things. He's a great businessman. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he rose the comic game to what it is in the 90s. Now, whether you like him or not, it's a different story, but I think he's completely self-aware, and what he does is very calculated.
Okay, so and that's a reasonable position. I of course, like you say, I don't hold the same position because I do. Having said that, you're giving him credit for basically being the world's greatest troll of all time.
I didn't say he was the greatest. I just said he was good at it.
well, and look, I do think that he probably is trolling because the end of this story is, or I say the end of this story, God knows Rob Liefeld is never going away. But the end of this portion of the story is that he's claimed to have quit Twitter completely. I quit Twitter completely today, and this is funny, something else that me and Nick were talking about pre-show. He makes this post on Facebook saying, I quit Twitter today, and you can find me, Rob Liefeld, not here on Facebook, but on Instagram. It's like, dude, really? Really? And then of course, he tweets a couple more times after that big hoo-ha.
He's smart. He's just smart when it comes. Now, that's where, I guess I'm one of the weird Liefeld guys. I don't like his art. I recognize his popularity and what he did for the comic industry, but I do recognize his greatness as a businessman. And I like him just because of what he does. Just like I like Chael Sonnen. I like Conor McGregor. They talk a lot of crap. And I like what he brings to the comic industry. I think he brings
I got to tell you that you know there is something to that, and there's something to the negativity or the reflection back of, like, you know, this whole deal with him. I won't sign New Mutants 98. I won't sign any of the facsimile editions of New Mutants 98. I won't sign that for my fans. And he makes this scarcity situation where all you want to do now is get your book signed some way, shape, or form, right? So, I mean, he's creating an attraction to himself from that negativity. And it's like, you know, I always thought, like, you know, why the hell wouldn't you sign a book for a fan? I bought you a book when it first came out. I sold it, you know, my collection. I bought your book again, way more money than it should have been, you know, because it got value, you got the movie and the whole deal, right? And you won't sign that damn book. Like, why not? You made your money off of me. You think I'm going to go turn it over and flip it on eBay? And if so, so what? You made your money. What's the big deal with signing the book? You know, just that little bit that he, like, just screws the fans that way. It just gets me.
It does feel like in some ways he's sticking it to his fans. That it kind of just sticks in my crawl that I don't know. And see, the bad thing about this is I'll freely admit that I kind of have a double standard between Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane, because those two guys in a lot of ways feel cut from the same cloth in ways, but in other ways they feel much different. They're definitely master self-promoters. Like, come on, man. The Spawn movie originally was okay for the CGI that they had at the time, but Todd McFarlane basically just has a screenplay, an actor, and a production company willing, and that's about all that I guess he's got a director too, but people are already, like, freaking out in love with the idea of a new Spawn movie that may not have a whole lot of Spawn in it if Todd McFarlane is to be believed. So, and I bring that up to say Todd McFarlane does the same kind of promotion, but it doesn't feel nearly as negative to me. And maybe that's what it is that I have with Liefeld, is the negativity that it feels like he breeds negativity. Is that just me?
Well, you know, there is a difference between the artwork. I mean, Todd McFarlane, if he does a book, you want to buy it. Rob Liefeld, I don't know. I mean, I've seen the last few covers that he's done, and I passed on them. So, I mean, that would be the one difference that I would have between the two of them.
So like, you didn't like the Major X where Wolverine didn't have an upper lip? You didn't dig that about it? Or the fact that Major X's abs went way down below what anybody would consider an actual belt line? Like, that didn't appeal to you?
You know, the art wise, it wasn't very appealing, I'll be honest. But the fact that he's creating new characters, I mean, I guess that's cool. Like, one of the things that I think he doesn't get credit for is the fact that he now I don't know how much influence he had on each of these characters, but he did create Cable. He did have something to do with creating Deadpool. So, I mean, as a comic book collector, it is cool when somebody creates something new, because it means we got another key issue, right?
Right. Now, I will tell you, you should really look up his quotes about his co-creator of Deadpool sometime. And I'm not going to spoil that. That's homework. Listeners, your homework is go find out what Rob Liefeld has said about his co-creator of Deadpool. And I don't know, that's probably the other thing that irks me. I will leave it at it was unflattering what he said.
Yeah, but is that any different than Bill Finger and Bob Kane, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby? I mean, there seems to be have been this disconnect for years between artists and writers and who gets the credit for what they've created.
You know what? That's actually a very fair comparison, and I actually think that Rob Liefeld will be found out later in his life to be much more like Bob Kane than people realize. and that's where I will leave it at. And that's not. I'm sorry, and that's not a compliment. That's where I will leave it at with that comparison.
I do have one argument, that nobody just, comic book fans, they want to, dig at Liefeld and they want to, defend him or attack him. But here is my thing on the outside looking in. Like I said, I just give him credit for what he is. He's a heel. He is a classic heel. In wrestling, he is a heel. He is a bad guy. He's not the guy you want or need, but he's there. Comic books need him because he draws attention like moth to a flame. Everybody's talking about him. And the thing is, there's people that don't even read comics talking about him right now. The thing is, Rob Liefeld is a part of comic book lore, just like anybody else. You're not going to get rid of him. And I think comic books need him. Now, whether you like him or not, that's a different story. But I think he brings a level of interest to it that you just got to listen and watch. That's my opinion of it.
That's why we started this show out with talking about Rob Leifeld.
He's must-see TV. He's like Conor McGregor. Every time Conor McGregor walks into the cage, I watch him whether I think he's going to lose or not because it's just that entertaining.
I think too, there's something to that because it's not really coincidence that the first mutant to be created for a while, since Disney, Marvel, Fox, and all that stuff got together, right? It was Liefeld that Marvel chose to create the next mutant, right? Because now you have this sense of, is it going to be the next Deadpool or the next Cable, right? So everybody's going to buy that book, whether the art is good or bad or whatnot.
Exactly.
I don't disagree, and Josh brings up a good point. You kind of have to have those bad guys in order to make you care a little bit more about the good guys. It's the same as in the fictional comics and the same as like you're talking about wrestling and stuff like that, or mixed martial arts.
People don't have that bad guy, and they either love him or they hate him, but they're drawn to it. You got to watch it.
And it takes you back to the Game of Thrones. Like everybody hated a lot of the bad guys on Game of Thrones, but because they were so good at being bad guys, you loved the show because you couldn't wait for those guys to
Cersei to hell, and you had to watch it.
Bringing it back to a little bit of professional wrestling here, I will tell you that as a kid, I despised Ric Flair. As an adult, I appreciate everything that man did because talk about the uber heel. That cat was the uber heel. But now you look back on him, you're like, that guy was so cool. What the heck was I thinking? I was way too immature to understand just how cool Ric Flair's. Maybe whenever I'm 70 and Rob Liefeld is dead, maybe I will.
He had a $14,000 Rolex. How could you not like that man?
That's how I felt about the Honky Tonk Man. I hated him when I was a kid, but man, every time the Honky Tonk Man would come on, that was the best part of the show. Literally. You know who I hated? The heel, Mr. Perfect, and now I appreciate him the same way. I hated Perfect.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. Josh, you're slightly younger than the rest of us here.
Yeah.
And I remember Kurt Hennig from the AWA back a ways, man. That was before the Mr. Perfect gimmick. He was actually a face, and I like him much better as a heel.
Oh, he was perfect heel.
Oh yeah, he was great. Ravishing Rude.
Oh yes, that's back
okay.
Right there.
Somebody's gonna have to call up Gauze, and we're gonna have to do an old school podcast on wrestling and just sit here and geek out about the old school wrestlers we loved and hated.
Ivan Putski.
Comparison. It's a great comparison between Liefeld and a heel. The heel wrestlers. You look at them, Mr. Perfect, the Honky Tonk Man. All those wrestling comparisons are apt when comparing Rob Liefeld. It's the same thing. And you love him, you hate him, but you got to appreciate him.
Well, I can dig that. Well, I tell you what, guys, let's transition off of Rob Liefeld. I'm sure that we can work him back into the conversation at some point if we need to. But I want to kind of talk about the new news over at Sci-Fi. Our favorite channel for
Cancellations.
for comic book show cancellations right now. Turns out that before Lobo got his first full appearance on Krypton, he's already got slated to get his own spin-off series on Sci-Fi. And so we have, I'm being a bit facetious, I did not count the amount of moments that he was on screen, but it was not many. It was very few, not a lot of banter. So the jury is still out on this version of Lobo. I will say that I am a fan of the 90s Lobo, where he is a bit more hulking and a bit just larger than life Lobo. And that's not the physicality that this actor is able to do. And it looks like it's I believe it's Emmett J. Scanlon is who's playing him on Sci-Fi. Bear with me. Yeah, that's who it is. And he's muscular, but he's just an average sized guy, really. And I look at him the same way I look at Venom. I want a guy who's like larger than life, and a guy that whenever I look at him, he looks like the big bad intergalactic space biker guy that's also a bounty hunter and these kind of things. Look, I want Dog the Bounty Hunter, just with the right complexion and the right build. That's what I want for Lobo. And this guy doesn't quite pull that off physically. But Josh, in pre-show, you had some comments. You've read a bit of Lobo. What's your opinion? What do you think they have to get right to make this Lobo successful?
You know what? It's kind of hard to say, especially with this being the Sci-Fi universe and not being a part of the DC universe. Lobo, I mean, you know, being Zarni and whatever, he can toe-to-toe with Superman. I mean, really, I mean, in a battle, he can battle Superman credibly. So I think for whoever your Superman is, whether it be Henry Cavill or whoever, he's got to be credible physically to be able to take that guy on. So I've seen this guy. I haven't watched the latest episodes that you're alluding to, and I have seen screenshots of him. He's not that big, you know, but he seems okay to me as far as just looking at him. But I think that Lobo's all about attitude. You know, he's got a bad attitude. He's a biker. You know, to me, I think that's more important. His overall attitude, his charisma, that kind of thing. Because, you know, I think whoever wrote him, you know, thought about, you know, a Hell's Angel, a biker. You know, he's got that bad attitude. He's got that edge to him. I think that's what's more important to encapsulate, you know, as far as who's playing Lobo and whether it's good or not. You got to have a good story. You know, you got to have a good story before you have anything. So, I mean, I'm going to reserve judgment until I watch it.
Right on. Well, and really, to me, the jury is still out because, like you say, he simply hasn't had enough screen time, in my opinion, yet to form a real hardened, and this is the way I feel. I'm given just basics of, like, his physical presence does not seem to be quite there where I would like it to be. The other thing is he has an accent of unknown origin, and I'll just have to wait and see some more of his dialogue and stuff like that before I fully pass judgment on that. I'm not sure if that's the actor himself or if that was a creative choice that the director gave him. I don't know. Really, I always kind of envisioned him with one of those thick Northeastern New York accents. That's the way I've read him in the past whenever he's guest starred in books that I've read and stuff. Nick, how do you read him whenever you've had the opportunity?
Yeah, Nick. I mean, you got that.
I would think, you know, like, you know, fuck you, I'm gonna fuck you up, like, you know, that big New York thing going. I'll tell you though, when I saw some of the screenshots, you know, I didn't get to watch Krypton. I didn't see the actual on-screen action, so I didn't hear the accent. But the couple of screenshots of Google searches I saw from the neck up, I got like, is he Johnny Depp? Is he like doing the Captain Jack thing because of the way the hair and stuff? Like it was a demonized Captain Jack. I'm like, I'm not. This is the logo that I remember seeing in the '80s, like you said, hulking out. So, and the guy, I don't know the actor, but I don't, like you said, Josh, like toe to toe with like a Henry Cavill. Like I don't see that with this particular rendition of the character. Although I will reserve judgment until I actually get to see more on screen. But from what I saw, just from the overview, like I'm not sure this is the Lobo we're looking for.
I'm hopeful. I'm just hopeful because, like we talked about before, last episode on the podcast, we talked about all the cancellations and all of the comic book or nerd culture shows that are either ending or that are got canceled in 2019, and we're going to be missing like a dozen shows. So you're missing a dozen shows. You're really hopeful that this comes up. Now, Josh, I know you're a fan of The Boys. That's one that didn't come up as a replacement. They're coming up on Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
There's a couple other, and there's one that's escaping me that I really got bummed that I forgot about. That was coming up as a replacement show, but really that's only 3. That means we're still -9 overall for shows that we're going to be missing. I am hopeful that Lobo is successful. I have my reservations because kind of like you said, Nikki, this is not really the Lobo that we're used to with the frazzled out hair and stuff like that, and the big, overly bold presence. But there again, I guess I've got to go back to my philosophy of these TV shows and movies. They're Elseworld type tales. That's the way you have to look at them if you're going to enjoy them as comic book fans. They can't be canon.
That's crazy, John, that you mentioned that. I get to thinking, I don't know as much about, looking back into the comics, but the Krypton is back when Jor-El was young. Now we got Lobo showing up. Does that mean that Zarnia at that point in time was destroyed, kind of like Krypton? I mean, because that's his origin. Am I not right?
Yeah, that's his origin. And in that way, he does reflect quite a bit like Superman. Just what if Superman had joined an intergalactic biker gang and decided to become a bounty hunter?
Well, does that mean that Lobo is young as well? So maybe that could kind of defend the fact that he isn't built the way that he's supposed to be.
Who knows? Is it the same Lobo?
Well,
is it the same person?
Is it Kid Lobo?
Well, no, that's a legitimate point. It absolutely could be. We could be seeing that development of Lobo turning into that. But and yeah, like I say, that's actually part of my complaint about them. He's been on the air for like 5 or 10 minutes out of an hour-long show. Granted, that's 40-ish minutes of actual show. So a quarter of the show, he's there. I don't know that that's enough for me to be super excited about them doing a spin-off show for him already.
I'm not excited whatsoever about it. I mean, to be honest, I'm a Valiant, first and foremost, a Valiant fan. But I'm also a DC fan, and I'm not really excited about a Lobo show. I mean, I'd be excited if they done an epic movie about him, if they were going to do it completely right to the character. But, I mean, I'll watch it, but I'm not just overly excited about it.
And it's sci-fi. So does Lobo fit sci-fi? Or does Lobo fit Netflix or something – where they can get away with swearing and everything is
have to be. It has to be just about that bad.
Now,
rash as he needs to be.
Now, understand this though. Go back and watch Deadly Class. Deadly Class. That now there was not the full blown nudity or anything like that, But as far as being crass, oh yeah, not a problem at all. Go back and watch that first season. And Justin is a guy who watched Happy and really liked the show Happy. If I'm not mistaken, it was just as crass as Deadly Class was, as far as, you know, some body humor jokes, dropping F-bombs when they needed to, you know, not a big deal for them.
And I would expect that on Sci-Fi, right? Sci-Fi is a little bit more edgier than, you know, your other, you know, channels that you could, you know, networks that you could watch stuff on. But the main question that I have is like, we're getting in, you know, this might have, you know, go back to Liefeld for a second, you know, maybe some of the undercurrents that he's alluding to. I get mixed messages from DC/Warner Brothers. Like, you guys want to go edgy and adult and mature, or do you want to go all out with, you know, the softer stuff? I mean, look at the whole Black Label and the bat penis and that whole, you know, ordeal. And then they pulled the Vertigo, right, finally. So that was generally more mature type comics, you know. So I see from the studio, you know, Warner Brothers perspective, and maybe from DC, you know, mixed signals. Which way do we want to go with their characters and their IP? You know, do we want gritty? Is that what, you know, the fans want? I would gather, yeah, because I know I like things when they're a little bit grittier, you know. Or do you want, you know, the Supergirl, where it's really kind of campy and all, you know, G-rated, if you will?
I personally think they could have both. They could have their cake and eat it too. Just like Marvel is hinting right now at having a multiverse in the MCU, and coming out and saying it in Spider-Man Far From Home, saying they've got a multiverse. I believe that you could have Arrowverse or the CW, where things can be a little more campy, a little more kid-friendly, family-friendly, and then have an entirely separate but semi-related universe on Sci-Fi, on a streaming service, where you get things like Swamp Thing, or you get things like Lobo, or
Titans, right? Titans was actually pretty dark and gritty, and I enjoyed that on DC Universe. I enjoyed that series immensely. But again, it's a different tone, like you're saying, you know.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a good point too. I mean, because I watched the first 2 episodes of Swamp Thing, and I mean, those are good episodes. I mean, would Lobo be better on the DC app than being on Sci-Fi? I think I'd rather see Lobo on the DC Universe app than seeing it on Sci-Fi, just because you know that he's going to drop F-bombs, and just about every word that he says in the comic book is followed up by frag this or frag that, right?
Fracking. Yeah, that was his byword in the comic books. And yeah, so Josh, I think it was you that said you'd like to see an epic movie of him. And as soon as you said that, my mind went to Guardians of the Galaxy meets an R-rated
Terminator,
Deadpool Terminator. Yeah, like
it's a dichotomy there. But you know, just like y'all were talking about, you know, the DCU, I was utterly. I mean, I'm a DC guy, but I was utterly pissed off when they canceled Daredevil on Netflix and The Punisher. That's by far the greatest properties that The Punisher and Daredevil has ever seen. And Marvel's just like, pull the plug on it. I'm like, what the hell? Charlie Cox was perfect. Everything was perfect about that show. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, it didn't have its quirks, but I hope they retain the cast. I hope they're just moving it over to Disney, because if that doesn't happen, that's a crime against humanity.
Well, it's going to be, in that case, it's going to be a crime against humanity. They sold off the set pieces. They sold off costume pieces. It's basically a message, you know, pulling that property back to where they want it to be. And I think it's a big miss, because some of the best TV shows from the Marvel Studios TV division that have been on Netflix, hands down. Maybe honestly, with the exception of Legion. That one's on FX.
To me, was Matt Murdock. I mean, if anybody was Matt Murdock, it was him. And
Well,
I thought Foggy Nelson was cast perfectly. Karen Page, everything about that show was great.
Mm-hmm.
And as well as the Punisher, first season 1 and 2. I mean, Bernthal, man, just played the Punisher perfectly. I mean,
Even Elektra. That I mean,
Oh, yeah.
the whole she was great.
This is the downside. This is the other downside that Nick's alluded to, that, or said that they've sold off pieces of the set and costumes and all these
they
things.
didn't sell them to me because I'd have bought them.
No, I know. Well, this is the other thing that I know of from reading. All of those actors, they were not contracted with Marvel or with Marvel Studios. They were contracted with Netflix.
Yeah,
Right.
And so that's the other thing. And they have a window, I believe it's 2 or 3 years before they can go and do anything that would be comic book related. Now, they were trying to paint this in a light of, if we cancel it now, it just starts our time clock on when we can hire these guys back and start down that road again. But I don't see it happening, man.
it's going to be a year away anyway, before they even launch the app or whatever. So I mean, maybe there's hope for it. Maybe.
Well, but see, that's my thing, though, is you're talking about 3 to 4 years before you actually get those people where they're available to do it. They've changed places in their life. They've done other things with their life. They may not be as perfectly cast as we think they are now.
We go to Terminator 3.
Well,
you need, so Marvel or Disney bought the controlling stake or the rest of the stake in Hulu. Hulu basically would have to take over Netflix, and that's how you save those shows, because then they come all back under the Disney.
I'm so far past trying to save a show. I'm not ever going to, I'm never going to engage in it. The thing is, the most important thing I can do is invest my time in watching it. I'll watch it. You give me the advertiser, and I'm not going to waste any more energy on it.
Josh, it's your fault that we don't have Firefly still.
You cannot blame that shit on me.
Oh, that's like a knife, Firefly.
No, I know. But dude, that's honestly how I feel about Deadly Class. I mean, we're kind of talking about the way that sci-fi treats comic book shows. Hey, man, don't be super shocked if for some reason, and this is the other reason why I'm really a bit skittish about throwing too much weight behind Lobo's going to be awesome. Truth of the matter is, if the second season of Krypton bombs, guess what? They may decide that it's not worth doing a Lobo spinoff because the main show kind of stunk it up for a second season. This is the other bad thing about something like Deadly Class. Deadly Class was one of those that most nerds that I talked to said it's on my list of things to watch, but it wasn't way up there with importance to watch. And right now, that seems to be the death of some of these shows. People just aren't putting it on their priority list to actually watch it.
And that's a good point.
That brings up a good idea.
The difference between people watch live, right, and they do certain ratings, and then people, DVR or whatever. I think that is a large reason why a lot of shows don't get the viewership and this whole legacy Nielsen rating or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I've seen that with a bunch of shows, even non-comic related shows. Look at Battlestar Galactica, or look at the spin-off show from Battlestar Galactica. Again, I forget the name of the show, but they did the same thing. Like, they pulled a show in the middle, and they had to quickly tie it up in 6 episodes. They did 3 episodes, and they ended those series. So it's a difference in behavior today that folks consume differently. I know I hardly watch anything live anymore.
Yeah. I think the whole cable medium is slowly dying. And so if you do create a show like Deadly Class, you're probably better off putting it on Netflix, Hulu, stuff. Well, I mean, I think Hulu covers the normal TV shows, but I mean, a show like Deadly Class would probably be more successful on Netflix than on Sci-Fi. And so, I mean, I guess the same thing would be said for Lobo. I mean, we'd have a better chance of getting multiple seasons of Lobo on Netflix than we would on Sci-Fi.
Well, I'll bring up, something that me and Todd were talking before even the pre-show. Arguing about, Camille was on here, talking to us, and I was arguing continuity with him. People's attention span is a lot less than it used to be. I mean, these 150, 200 issue runs of comics just don't work anymore because they don't have the patience with them, number one. If sales aren't there, week to week, they're going to cut it. They're going to pull the plug, just like they did on Tom King. And this may be fitting for another discussion, but, maybe they should approach, television shows even the same way. What I was suggesting is maybe do shorter contained stories independent of continuity and just let somebody tell a story. Make one season of a certain story and put it on Netflix. Boom, there you go. There's one story, and it's 12 issues long or 12 episodes long, and there you got it. You got a season of Lobo, and it tells one complete story that's wrapped up.
That's not a bad idea. And Nick brings up a show that is another one of my favorites, which was Legion. And Legion, from the very get-go, 3-season arc. That's it. We're not going to stretch it out for any reason. Give us 3 seasons. We're going to tell the story in 3 seasons, and then it's going to be done. So I could definitely see something where they do like not a mini series, but like you're saying, a season-long arc or a 2 or 3 season-long arc, and then move on to somebody else. Honestly, with one of the shows on the Marvel streaming app, whenever it shows up, is the What If series that it sounds like they're investing fairly heavily in. I'll tell you right now, if I get the Marvel streaming service, I guarantee it will be for that show alone, frankly, because I've collected What If comic books, not since day one of collecting comic books, but since the day I found out they were a thing. The day I found out they were a thing, What If comic books became something that was a part of What If and Elseworld. Those are, the DC equivalent of What Ifs. But I mean, I would be okay with that. And the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they had that one season that was basically a What If season where they were stuck in a simulation of some sort. And do you remember? I don't remember what season that was.
Last season where they're in outer space and the future and that sort of thing.
Well, something like that, but they actually had an episode in the season that was called What If.
I can't recall what episode you're. I mean, I've seen all of them, so
right.
It's been a while. I haven't watched any of the yet.
Well, it was kind of like if Hydra had basically
X1, exactly. Yeah, that was
right.
It played into last season somewhat, I believe, or maybe it was the season before, especially where Fitz and the girl were Hydra agents and put on opposite sides. Yeah, I can recall that.
Right. And so I am all for them doing What Ifs because, well, let's be real here. The comic book nerds, we all know that What Ifs and Elseworlds exist. We know that that's part of the genre. The casual people that don't really know, the people who are just fans of movies and shows, all they care about is a good show. If you drop in a really good What If story, it may cause them to it may pique their interest at that point. You know what I mean? Like I see that poster behind Nick there, the Fantastic Four. The very first issue of What If is what if Spider-Man had joined the Fantastic Four, right. and it's a compelling story. I mean, that's basically Spider-Man #1 was him realizing he was broke and deciding he needed a job, and the way he was going to do his job interview, I'm going to break into the Baxter building. I'm going to show the Fantastic Four they need me. That's basically how that went. Well, they told him to buzz off in the real comic, but in the what if, they decided, you know what, we need this guy, and told a fairly compelling, different story there.
Aren't they supposed to do a what if series?
Yeah, that's what we.
That's where I was talking about. Is that will be one that when Marvel, if I get the streaming service, that will be one of the main reasons why I get that streaming service.
And a lot of comic book publishers have or not even the publishers, but the creators of it has caught wind of this, massive change in how people consume media. Like Mark Millar, he sold all his rights to Netflix. So we're going to see Reborn. We're going to see Huck. We're going to see, all his properties on Netflix. I think the Magic Order's coming up. Those things, and those are all contained 6-issue arcs. Mark Millar kick ass, that kind of thing. And he said, that he may expound on that in the future. But I expect those to be 1-2 seasons on Netflix, and they're self-contained, and let's move on. Dark Horse is doing the same thing with them. So, I expect to see a lot of their properties as kind of short, self-contained series there.
I would be down with that. And yeah, Magic Order is another one that I missed. That's a comic book that's replacing stuff.
And it was
there were like 4 different variant covers.
Mm-hmm.
And Adam Hughes did one. Normally an Adam Hughes variant cover would be the hands down winner of the 4 variants. It was kind of an underwhelming cover, to be honest with you, in my opinion.
San Diego Comic-Con previews variant is the one to have.
That is,
they made 2,000 copies of it, something like that. You can still get them on eBay for like $20. So if you're going to snag them up, do it now.
Do it right now. Yeah, don't wait, because if you wait, and by the way, guys, to our listeners, I've already hinted, if you were paying attention to the Facebook page, I've already hinted at, and actually the Collector's Corner too, several places I've hinted at the next topic that we're going to talk about. I'm going to give some advice on some winning spec books, but you guys got a bonus right there on the Magic Order, man. That's a good one. That's a good spec book. But the Huck book, those are the ones that I actually think have a chance to be real sleepers, and they're dirt cheap still, man. You can find those in dollar bins.
Yeah, and I got some homework reading for you, John. Talking about Lobo.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever read it, but American Alien, the series back from about 2 to 3 years ago, Max Landis wrote it for DC Comics about Superman's early days. It features Lobo in the last 1 or 2 issues. It's pretty entertaining, so read it.
A friend of mine picked that up. He was a buddy of mine in St. Louis. He's kind of just one of those guys, a very casual comic book fan. But that was one of them that brought him back into comics, where he decided to get the Marvel Unlimited and like the DC streaming service, so that he could also get all of the ebooks for all the comics that he wanted to read, basically. And yeah, American Alien is one of them. That was a really hot property back whenever it was first came out too.
And it's a pretty fantastic series. I believe it's 6 issues, something like that. I can't remember. It's been a while since I
6 or 8
when they come out. So I read them back to back to back, when they come out. So, and I filed them away. I haven't looked at them again, but I just remember Lobo was in the last few issues, and it was pretty epic.
Right on. I'll definitely have to check that out. This is the downside to some of those being the hot, new, trendy book. They get smoking hot as they're coming out, and then everybody pays up on them. And if you didn't get them off the rack and you paid up on them, generally speaking, that 2 or 3 years down the road, even the most classic books we've talked about in the past, Kingdom Come is one of my favorites to recommend to new comic book readers, because it's 4 issues. It's brilliant art, totally well written. But man, you can find them if you pay $5 a book on them. That's like the tippy tip top on what I would suggest paying on them, because you can find either that or buy it in the trade paperback. But you know that those kind of books, it seems like, unless they're just like the cream of the crop, like Watchmen or V for Vendetta or something like that,
Dark Knight,
they're not always the best investment long term. You know.
Yeah, you gotta be looking for the keys, like the Immortal Hulk keys, and Naomi #1. That's a great story. And
Teen Titans. Well, there's another one. You know, it's kind of randomly popped up. You didn't expect.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. And dude, we can talk about those random keys. I always bring up the Batman New 52, the first appearance of Mr. Bloom.
Yeah, it's like 32, right? No, maybe a little.
Yes,
42.
I don't remember. It was
I think
like
it's somewhere in there.
whenever I first started paying attention to it, like it was somewhere in the like $25 to $30 range, made it all the way up into like the $50 range.
It's there now. I'm fixing to go home and sell mine.
Dude, no, it's no longer there. That's what I'm saying. It's like $3 now.
I was like, what?
Yeah, man. No, that's what I'm saying. It tanked on us. But at the time was a really hot book, a hot commodity, and that's one of the reasons why I was a little skittish on the Batman Who Laughs. You got to make sure they actually do something with him. Yeah, he's a cool character and cool concept, but if they don't do anything with him long term, you know, if they do this one series with him and he's never heard from again, you know, yeah, he was cool, but you gotta have staying power. You just have to.
I still think I think you're gonna see this volume rehash itself, because I have a gut feeling, you know, with Robert Pattinson being cast as Batman, that age group, you know, that he's gonna fall in. I really think Snyder's Run is where they're gonna look, and I can't say I blame them unless they do Hush. It has to be Snyder's Run, in my opinion.
Or Court of Owls.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's inside that run. I mean, you got the Court of Owls. You have a Death of the Family. You have 0 Year, which, in my opinion, and then you have Endgame, which those 4 arcs, in my opinion, really were great. Maybe take out Death of the Family out of there, but if you do Court of Owls, you do, 0 Year. Those 2 right there, it would be fantastic for filming. And I really don't have any desire to see Robin again. I just want to see a Batman movie. Screw everybody else. Just make it Batman and Alfred. Let's get it on. I hope that's what we're going for.
That's an interesting choice of words there for Batman and Alfred to get it on.
Well, no, what I'm talking about is just the story, you know, a good story. And I thought that, for what it was, I thought that Snyder and Capullo broke it down very well. Is just Alfred and Batman. You know, there's really no outside characters in some of those stories. It's some of Batman's early years. I thought it was fantastic, especially with Court of Owls, and I hope that's where they're going with it.
Well, I hope so too. I've got a couple of those books that I have quietly stashed away myself. Now, you know, we talking, bring back to Lobo real quick. You know, we all know his first appearance is already it's a reasonably attainable book still. You should be able to get it well before, and I don't think that the show has actually had any bearing at all on the pricing on it yet. So you know, you still have time to pick up his first appearance if that's something that people are looking for. The other one that I've spec'd on is his first self-titled, which is man, you should be able to pick those up in dollar bins. But if the show goes over well, I think that could go. I mean, if you're picking it up in dollar bins and you get 20 or 30 of them and they spike up to even $5 or $10, that's a win. You know what I mean? That's where I've been putting my money away at is those dollar bin Lobos, just kind of on the off chance that it is a good one. since we're talking a little bit about specking on some books there.
Well, I'll tell you, with the Lobo's first appearance, it's already been specced up. If you look on eBay and everything, like they've already jumped on, TV appearance, Krypton, spinoff. I mean, I've seen that book. I don't know that it's sold because I didn't check the sold listings, but I've seen that book upwards of $100 already.
Well, but I mean, even before then, it had gone up considerably. But it's not. I'm saying it's not to the point where it's like so far out of range, like a Wolverine book would be.
Right.
You know what I mean? A Hulk 181. For most of us, 5Gs is not pocket change to go grab one of those bad boys. Anyway, that's just. There are all various ways you can spend books, and I tend to stick around the dollar bins because they're a lot easier on the wall. And if they hit, I might have $20 in it, but if they hit, man, then I've made a killing on them. And you got really, let's be honest. and I've got 19 other books.
JR, if you need money, Nikki Shines can help you, but you just got to pay up. That's all.
See, the reason I'm not willing to borrow money from Nikki Shines is I'm afraid he's going to send somebody to break my kneecaps.
I'm just trying to think of a television show on itself, Netflix or otherwise. I mean, maybe I'm off top and I can't think, but has really a television show spiked any book? I mean, with any significance? I mean, Jessica Jones, Alias was already up there before Jessica Jones even got to television, right?
The Legion first appearance.
Okay, that Umbrella Academy. Give me another one.
Umbrella Academy is one. You know what? Deadly Class. The Deadly Class books, they were relatively low whenever the show was announced, but when the show was up and going,
20, 30 bucks. There's still appreciate a real spike. I mean, not like the movies generally do. I mean, TV shows just don't. I don't think they drive the market as much.
You're right in that TV shows don't as much. That's actually one of the reasons why, and this is a good transition for us. The last thing that we were going to talk about tonight is Robert Kirkman's Oblivion Song comic is being developed as a film now too.
Okay, The Walking Dead #1. I forgot that one. Maybe you should slap me.
You know what though? Really,
that's a phenomenon though. That I think was an exception, honestly.
Yeah, it was one of those low print runs. Like God Country. There's another one to spec on. That one will compare it to The Walking Dead if it ever does make that kind of leap to film because of it's low print run and low attention.
Right. Well, and that's Donny Cates, isn't it?
Yes, that was one of it. That was probably his first big coming out.
Big break in. Yeah, I agree. Well, but yeah, and this is what Walking Dead #1 is one of those books that I would like to say that it's the exception that proves the rule, not just the exception to the rule.
You can't just count The Walking Dead though. You got to count Rick and Morty #1 too, because that's a cartoon, and that's a hot ass book too.
But wait. I think the cartoon came before the comic book though, didn't it? I think the cartoon,
I don't know specifically.
I might look that up.
I'm pretty sure the television show came first, but I think that The Walking Dead is kind of like a lightning in a bottle, in which Image puts out a shit ton of books every month that you never pay attention to, and they don't get big print runs and they don't gain a lot of traction. But The Walking Dead did, and God Country is a perfect example because if you look on eBay right now, you're not going to find a 9.8 God Country for less than $100. I mean, you're just not. I mean, right now. So, I mean, imagine if that turned into The Walking Dead, with that kind of fandom, it would easily be $1,000 book. Because I don't think there was like 12,000, something like that on the print run. I mean, it's a low print run.
Sweet, I'm rich right now. I'm feeling like
what though?
money in my closet right now.
The other thing that you'll want to look for, we're talking spec books here, so might as well bring this up. The Image 25th anniversary editions of some of these books that we're talking about, like God Country.
Well,
dude, if you're gonna spec on them, granted it's not a first print.
Redneck is there. Redneck one. If you can get the gold, I got a 9/8 gold signed by Donnie Cates, and I put it away. I mean, just in case for a rainy day.
Yeah, there's an ash can version of that, and there's also a sketch version of that too. But that's what makes me love the modern comic books. Is I don't have to pay way up, and I can still get that first appearance and be at the A cover. I'm still going to pay up a little, but I'm going to get the same story on the inside. You know what I mean? But if you really
for like $10 when it came out, I mean, I just loved the comic and bought the gold off of the 25th anniversary off eBay for like $10 when it came out. It wasn't much. It wasn't a big pay up.
Well, I mean, that's the thing to be said about us Wednesday shoppers, and I know Nick, you're one of us, the Wednesday shoppers too. That you probably get as excited as I do when Wednesday comes up and you got the new books. I mean, like Totally Awesome Hulk 22. You go to the shop, you pick up a copy. Next thing you know, like a week later, it's $100.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I love that.
Exactly. And that's one of the cool things about this marketplace is you can go out, you can find that one book, and yes, you spend $40 on probably dollar bin books, but you get that one book that's $100.
And sometimes it's the most obscure book. I bought Rags #1 because, hey, chick bikini, machine gun, looks cool. Next thing you know, hey, it's low print run. Everybody wants it. That book, was going for $40-$50 in like the next day.
There was a lot of controversy with that.
Low print run is the key. Something big. It has to be great, and it has to be a low print run. I had no clue Donnie Cates was going to be what he is now when God Country and Redneck both came out. But the stories interested me. I bought them, and then I bought them off of eBay, the 25th anniversaries for cheap. And now Donnie Cates is the key to the Marvel Universe. So naturally, anything he ever done is going to be, up for property.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we get lucky with it.
Well, and Todd brings up being a Wednesday shopper. You guys know, typically I'm not a Wednesday shopper. That's not my wheelhouse. But for everybody who's watching on YouTube, you guys have already seen this ad nauseum. You guys were, but dude, how can you not pick up that Catwoman, dude? How could you not pick that up?
Beautiful.
That Catwoman #12 by Art Germ.
You have that out here.
Freaking.
Did you see that Jessica Cruz book?
No.
It was Justice League Odyssey. It's the new cover, the variant, and I think I gifted it to Todd, but check this cover out. I mean, I don't know if I can do it for the.
Yeah.
Seen that?
Oh wow!
Really,
that is just gorgeous.
Dude,
Adam Hughes.
Adam Hughes.
Adam Hughes. I saw this thing and I'm like, I have to have it. I didn't even know what the title was, to be honest with you. I just saw Adam Hughes, and this is what he does best.
Exactly. That's a heavily spec book right there. But
it is.
I could see Jessica Cruz making a big appearance. I think she'd do well as a Green Lantern.
There's a lot of speculation around Jessica Cruz as well. I'm gonna name the channel. It's Comic Tom 101. He's been talking about speccing on Jessica Cruz for a while, and it makes sense because it checks a lot of boxes that are meaningful. Whether we agree with whether you should be,
that's
Derek Chew too, man.
The Derek Chew books, man. I'm gonna take a stack of them. I'm gonna send them to Mr. Palmer. I'm gonna get them signed and I'm gonna put them away because these are some of the most action-packed covers I've ever seen, capturing a moment of time with such action. It's just incredible.
right up there with Eric Van Scriber with in my opinion with some of the. I'm sorry, my bad. See, I do that all the time. That's kind of my shtick on the show is I never get anybody's name right unless if I hate them. Unless if I hate them.
Did you call it?
I call it and then I call him Rob Leifeld or Leifeld or whatever his name is. Anyway, yeah, those are some smoking books too. Those Derek Chew books. We're showing off books, and Todd knows this has become kind of a thing too. Since we're trying to do a listener drive to increase listenership, we're doing a giveaway and stuff like that. I'm going to flash another one of the books that is going in the care package for the giveaway.
Am I eligible?
No, you're not eligible. I already had to give Shazam stuff. Are you kidding me? What's the matter with you?
I thought
that was my fault for not saying Shazam couldn't enter, so that's on me. No, yeah, you guys can enter, but you got to follow the rules to enter.
I'm
not going to
do that.
See, I knew it. I'm not going
to follow the rules to anything.
I might.
Todd's like, I want the care package. I'm going to get listenership up. That's what I do. Well, let's real quick. I do want to touch on the specs for Oblivion Song, since that's kind of what started us down this trail of talking about specs and stuff. And really, let's be real here. A lot of the specs that we've been talking about have been image books. So if you're not pulling image books, at least the image number ones. Come on, man. Where you been at for the last 20 years, for crying out loud?
Actually, let me chime in on that. I mean, Image does do a ton of number ones, and not everyone is worth picking up. I mean, the one thing that I will give Image is they give creators many opportunities. They open up the opportunities to many people for many different stories. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the Redneck number one, or you're going to get the Oblivion Song number one, or Walking Dead number one. You know, I mean, there's many times that I go into the comic shop and I see an Image book that's a number one that I'm just like, I don't know is this worth picking up?
And I've heard, I believe Todd McFarlane, you know, I've heard some of his strategy is a little bit of the spaghetti theory. You know, take good ideas, you know, what, and believe in them and give them a shot. So, I mean, you got that one in. I mean, Image does put out a ton of number one. So you're talking about a 1 in 50 shot with Redneck or Oblivion Song or that kind of thing. I mean, Robert Kirkman, of course, when his name's attached to something, I mean, you pay attention. But I mean, Donnie Cates coming out with God Country number one, nobody knew who he was. So I mean. And nobody really took a flyer on it. I mean, other than just believing in the previews.
But by the time he got to Redneck, though, that was a pretty hot book.
It was, because the get-go took off like it did.
But see, that's kind of the point too. I guess I shouldn't say pick up every Image number one. That's a bit of a stretch there. But taking good, educated guesses on them. Like when you know that there is an artist or a writer or some type of creator that is that's involved that you believe in, I think it's a good idea to do that.
Well, you know, Image is somewhat political too. So like a lot of their number ones, you know, unless you swing in their political direction on that book, you know, you might not really necessarily care about it. And, you know, like politics is usually 50-50. Like Days of Hate, for instance. I mean, I read that. I just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like I didn't enjoy it. So, I mean, Image does go with the political nature as well. And, you know, one of the problems with Image.
Yeah, well, and that's a fair criticism of them, that if they're towing a certain political line, and it doesn't match up with your worldviews, I think that's a totally legitimate reason not to continue to read a book. Now, I'll say this too: there have been plenty of books that I have read that don't meet my personal political views, but that it was food for thought enough that I still enjoyed them. So I think that if it's well written and if the political messages are subtle enough, we as comic book fans are willing to overlook that a little bit, and to varying degrees. I mean, the Watchmen, that's one of them that there's political overtones all over that book, and basically saying that to a certain extent the common man is not smart enough to have the freedom of choice that they're given in a place like the United States. So the Watchmen have to create and even then the political figures were not smart enough to figure this out, that they had to create something in lieu of them. You know what I mean? So there are examples of politics that I don't think any of us would necessarily espouse, but that were compelling enough reads and at least food for thought,
Yeah, but I don't like The Watchmen, for instance. I don't think it was as politically driven as some of the Image books that they put out. I mean, I think you could almost read The Watchmen and not catch the politics of it. Where some of the other books, you can clearly catch the politics.
Oh yeah, like I'm trying to think of the book that I read recently that got reviews.
Do you guys read Unnatural, right?
I have not followed Unnatural, actually. That's not been a book. It's just not my cup of tea. I gather that it's a popular book and that there are people that enjoy it. I could tell from the very get-go that was not going to be one that was going to be my cup of tea.
You talk about political undertones. This is a race undertone in that, and species undertone, and having, relations with the same, someone just like me as opposed to someone different than me. Now, it's a good story and there's action, there's intrigue and all that, but there's, just like you guys are saying, there's definitely political undertones to it, that if it's not your cup of tea, it could actually put you off. I happen to enjoy the story, and I'm looking to see that thing come to its 12-issue arc. So I think they're at issue 10 now. But that's the thing. It's a good story. Image put it out. I grabbed the number one. There's tons of variants, there's tons of exclusive variants. But as a story, it's actually pretty good. But you have to have the taste for the underlying messages that are in the story.
Issue 1. And I just wasn't impressed with it as the way a lot of other people were. But I didn't disagree with too much of it because, I didn't really catch any of that. But, after issue 1, I was just like, it's just not my cup of tea. It wasn't bad or, the art was fantastic.
And it may just be that they were developing the storyline in issue number 1 and not really getting to the crux of the matter, too. That's one thing about plenty of writers that I like is, just like Todd was talking about Immortal Hulk there. I've read 3 books. I read the annual. I'm sorry, 2. I haven't even read the latest issue yet, but I've got it. I own 3 of the books. But he tells such a small portion of the story, but it's so riveting. I have no earthly idea what's going on yet, really. But on the flip side, I can't wait to get the next book, and that's where I think that might be, Nikki, is that kind of what you're saying about Unnaturals? Is it kind of more of a slower developing story since it's a 12-issue arc?
Yeah, so it developed into a couple of different chapters or, acts, if you will. Right. So there was a buildup from the first issue to the second issue. And then, by the 3rd or 4th issue, one of the arcs closed, the next chapter opened up. But, the undertones in it, it's like, okay, so obviously the character is a pig, right? Humanoid pig. Well, humanoid pig should only mate with other humanoid pigs. If you and fall in love with a wolf, that's bad. The reproduction program says you can't do that. So like that's the twist in the story that is underlying in there, and it's clearly a message. Besides all the rest of the stuff that's going on with the story, because there's some magic undertones about having spirits inside you and blood and magic and all this stuff. So, but that political undertone is definitely there.
I will tell you a book that I read recently, or semi-recently, within the last 6 months, I believe it came out. Do you remember Analog #1 that came out from Image? Yeah, I think it was, how do you say, Jerry Dugan or Jerry Duggan? He's a popular writer from Marvel, and I know I've read some of his work from Marvel, but it was a solo series he done, with Image. I believe it was him that wrote Analog 1. It's about a hitman in the future where, technology is no longer there, and basically you have to pass things. It's kind of like, imagine John Wick with passing notes. But obviously, issue #1, it really dug at some political views in a way, and it suggested almost violence against people that believe that way and disagreement with it. And after that, I put that issue down, and I did not get issue 2 beyond that. It was way too much for me.
Look, there are some, and Romulus is one that I read and didn't quite. I didn't like it as much as some others, but I believe that is also an Image title, or was an Image title at the time, and there were, for lack of a better way of saying it, there were militant feminism tones, not undertones. They were pretty blatant about it with Romulus, as far as, and I read the first 2 issues, but all of the males in there were antagonists, and there again, I only read the first 2. It turned me off to the point that I didn't care to read the next. Who knows where the story goes after the first 2. But yeah, I think some writers and some artists do themselves a disservice by being so blatant with their politics, and that's whether they're conservative or liberal, either or, it doesn't matter. Write a really, really good story, and if you insert some of those undertones in the story, or you reveal your own political views while you're writing that really good, compelling story, nobody's going to care. We're going to read it anyway.
And I think there's a place and time for everything. I'm ex-military. I understand if you're writing a book about the military, if you're in the Middle East and you may have a disagreement with a certain political view or a president, I understand. Things have their place and time, and just like, for example, I was talking about that Analog, it was him talking to himself about political ideas and what he'd like to do to people. It just did not seem necessary to the storyline, period. It wasn't even relevant. So, it was stupid, and I didn't dig it, and it just had no place in the book. It's kind of out of place. So, what you're saying there.
I think this brings up an interesting point, because, like, people say politics has always been a part of comics, right? Well, okay, so there's 1,000 action comics. There's 1,000 detective comics. How many of those comics, of those 1,000, do you really have this political drive in those books? A good story is basically, give me a good villain. I got a hero with a purpose, like Bruce Wayne. His parents were killed, so he's going to try to avenge that, right? And there's 1,000 comics out for Detective Comics. How many of those are really political?
Well, that does bring up a really good question, but it depends on how broad you want to interpret political. Are we talking about war propaganda there too? Because we all know that Superman comics and Captain America comics back in the Golden Age, and X-Men is another good example of the civil rights movement. there are politics in all of these,
but it was relevant.
but they're not the focus.
Relevant to the story. And
Right.
that's my argument. You know, I'm reading the story and it's not relevant and it doesn't make sense and it's just inserted into it.
Yeah. Be compelling. Well, and that's my point too, is be compelling first and then make it a quirk of your story or something. Okay, this is my example is, and I'm circling back to Deadly Class because that's one of them that I've been most interested in reading after watching the single season series. The main character, it's set in the 80s, okay, and the way it sets up is the main character is homeless. He's a teenager, and he's recruited by essentially a high school for assassins. And they go in and they teach him how to murder people, various ways of murdering people, from weapons to poisoning to fill in the blank. But one of the main things that this kid keeps bringing up is one of the questions is posed to him is given the opportunity to kill a murderer, a child molester, or a political figure, who do you choose? Do you choose the two very obvious criminals, or do you think deeper into it? And maybe that politician is a criminal too. He's just doing it better than everybody else. And I say all that to say this: I would never, ever be okay with somebody attempting to assassinate our president. But the main character there, whenever he's asked who you would kill, he basically looks him deadpan and says, "I'm going to kill Ronald Reagan." Now, again, I don't espouse that. I don't agree with that.
Well, what I'm saying is you got three. You got two of the three, and you got two that's obviously bad. And let's pick the third one because it sounds like some other kind of stuff I hear espoused. You know, I'm not going to take that bridge because it's only 99.9% safe. That's just
but see, the thing is though is, and now I've set that premise up and I've told you that. But what I'm telling you too is I don't agree with that. But the story is compelling. And so I want to see where the story goes, even though I know the writer, I mean.
I would have quit reading right there. That's the most ridiculous.
I know. No. But see, that's what you're, and I'm not doing it justice. And the reason I recommend that you would actually read it or look it up on YouTube, there is an action comic where it's being voiced and they're going panel to panel showing you the comic itself. Yeah. Look it up on YouTube. This is a deal. As a child, he blames Ronald Reagan for budget cuts that caused the death of his parents. Now, huge leap. I know that there are logical fallacies there that we as adults would not make. But I'm telling you,
I still wouldn't choose that over a child molester. I mean, that's
no. I get that, and I don't look. There.
If it was Hitler, if he could kill Hitler,
hold on,
different, right? Because the crime is different, right? The political. You could see if you eliminate this pawn, you could eliminate so many things.
I know. I mean, I completely agree. Okay, if you're saying Hitler. Yeah. After Hitler had killed a million Jews or, so forth. Yeah, that's all right. But we're not talking about that.
But from a political perspective, how many other families' parents died at the hands of these budget decisions? I think that's the point you're driving at, JR, where he's looking at it as it's a different type of mass murder, if you will. Look, that really is what it is they were setting it in a time frame where there was
political unrest.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that.
And so in that way, that's where I'm taking it out of it. Yes, he's saying he's espousing the murder, the assassination of Ronald Reagan, but it's at a point where and again, I personally would never espouse assassinating the president of the United States. Never, no matter how much I disagree with him. We have legal means for removing a man or woman from office. Go those legal means. Let justice take its course. We don't assassinate our leaders around here. That's not what Americans do, no matter how much we disagree with them. But the point is that it was more of a question being asked of these high schoolers to look at the impact that, if they're going to be assassins, what's going to have the most effect. And again, it's less that I agree with what they were espousing and more that I think that the story they were trying to tell was compelling. And I don't honestly believe that this teenager is ever going to be either put in the position to, in this fictitious world, be put in the position to assassinate Ronald Reagan. Or really what it boils down to is the kid finds out that the system that he's in, the assassin system that he's in, is corrupt and broken. And so really he's going to change his focus from Ronald Reagan to cleaning out the system that he's currently in. That's the path, if I were writing it, that the main character would go down, because that's the one that makes logical sense. And again, it's a compelling story. That's the reason why I don't turn it off, because this guy's like, okay, well, he's talking really socialist here. Yeah, we all know where socialism goes. If you're a socialist and you listen to the podcast, instant message me or Josh Shelton. We will help you see the world the right way. It can be seen the right way.
Here's my crux of my argument. It's not about politics at all. At all. I mean, you could insert Barack Obama into that, and I would have been as vehemently against it as I am about Ronald Reagan. I mean, that is to compare Barack Obama to a child molester or a murderer or something like that is absolutely insane.
But the point is,
it's insane.
Yeah, it almost sounds like our current media, where they try to drive you to thinking that the presidential candidates are worse than a child molester.
A child molester, and that's what I'm saying. That is at its root insane. It is insane, and that there is no defending it. I mean, I would call that writer insane.
No, but the point is, though, is there is a place to write that story, and if it's compelling and entertaining, I think that the story should be written, and that's where
free country, it's free speech. You can do what you want to, but
that's right. That's right.
You're insane.
No. I've already told you Legion is one of my favorite TV shows right now. And if you don't know the story on Legion, Legion's basically a nutcase, and it's like an hour-long, like Pink Floyd acid trip.
Wait till you see the boys. Wait till you see the boys. Then you'll agree that I'm insane.
Okay, I don't doubt.
Well, I get JR's point, though. I mean, it's not that I, again, espouse any of that, but so let's say that I don't know it was a child molester, I don't know what the other criminal was, but if that person affected one life and only one life, right, and you eliminate that person, you may have avenged one life. And I think what the author is trying to get at is if potentially you took the other life, which had some other effect that was on hundreds or thousands or millions of lives. That is what the point of the story is. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I could see where that story arc could go, like measuring the evils, right? Which one is more evil? Now, personally, I'm going to get the child molester. So
maybe I'm wrong here, John. Let me ask you this question, because I don't know that story. I haven't read it. is it Ronald Reagan or is it a fictitious president?
No. He actually names Ronald Reagan.
There's my problem.
Okay, and look, I don't think you're entitled to the opinion, and I absolutely see where you're coming from.
Well,
Don't get me wrong.
I mean, it was a person, obviously.
Well, and what Nick said, I mean, that's like comparing Ronald Reagan to Hitler.
Exactly. I mean, it's completely. I mean, this guy is alienating anybody that believes in Ronald Reagan, and it's insane. It's insane. And anybody that believes in Barack Obama, you name it, it's craziness. But it's what it is.
No, and look, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that in the context of the story, it makes the character more compelling. And I don't believe that it ever actually, like, again, it is a fictitious world, but I don't believe that. I believe that the main character, ends up seeing the corruption in the system that he's currently in, and taking his focus away from somebody that he believed took his parents away from him, and will start focusing on fixing the school that he's in and the system that he's in, as opposed to focusing on whatever president is in office. And like you say, I haven't read all of them. I'm not up to date on it, but I'm getting there, and I think that's the journey that he's making. And there again, too, who at 16, 17 years old didn't make absurd statements, didn't have a head full of mush. To be real honest, we were all a bunch of idiots at 16 and 17. I tell my kids all the time, the reason I don't trust you to do the right thing is because you're 16 and 17. I was 16 and 17, and I was an idiot then too. I'm just a little bit less of an idiot now at 40 years.
And exactly, I completely understand what you and Nick are saying, and I completely I agree with it. I mean, if the story needs to be told and wants to be told, tell it. But my problem, the whole problem is whether they just name a political ideology, attach a name to it, and that's my problem. That's it.
Well, also, I mean, if the guy that's writing the story is 40-something, right, and he's writing a story about like a 16-year-old person assassinating a president, right, because he doesn't agree with the ideology, I mean, I got a little bit of a problem with that.
I mean, there's a lot of problems, but I mean, there's a story there, and I understand it. But hey, why not make this president Mr. Such and Such instead of Reagan or Bush or Obama or whoever? Just
and they do that, but I find that the realism of adding an actual public figure's name, like the Watchmen, for instance, we've all seen the Watchmen. And Nixon was the president during Watchmen. Okay, that's who the president was for the comics and for the movie there. And I mean, they did not assassinate him, but basically under his watch, the Watchmen were able to have this cataclysmic episode, and all of New York is gone. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? Like, you add that small little level of realism to it,
John,
and I think that takes it to a different level.
If you want to see what I'm arguing executed to perfection, just watch The Boys. Watch it. It's completely political. It's completely political with presidents and you name it involved, and there ain't nobody mentioned, and it's fantastic.
Well, and look, I like Kingdom Come. I love Kingdom Come, and they don't mention any real presidents or real public figures, but there's still an element of realism there because they talk about the United Nations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think they could go that route. He could have gone that route with it.
Yeah, so
we're going to do a whole podcast on The Boys. We're going to do that.
if you just take the presidential assassination component out, and just say it's something else. I think that one of the compelling things I like about this whole book is that there's an omnipotent force that's putting ideas in these characters' minds to say, you really need to think about, what strings to pull to have the outcome for the greater good, if you will. Now, again, I don't condone the assassinations and all that, but if you look at that dilemma, that's what makes a good story, is being faced with very difficult choices.
And I completely agree with that on all levels. And like I said, military background, whatever. I mean, I understand probably, very well that things aren't very black and white ever. I mean, I understand not liking one side or the other. I mean, I served under George Bush, and I didn't like him as a president. I'll tell you that openly. And I thought he was a man, but, I mean, I didn't view with him, but it was what it was.
Well, and let's be real here. You can be a good man and not a good president, and you can also be not a very good man and by all accounts a great president. The things are not that you don't have to be both. Guys, we got way off on this tangent, which is cool by me. But I did, like I said, I did tease a couple of things that I've got to get to on this Oblivion song real quick, and I hate to cut that conversation off because
that's cool.
It's good. It's a good conversation that we have, and we don't always have disagreements on the podcast. That's good though, because
we don't normally have Josh.
Yeah, we don't normally have Josh.
I told him, I said, I'll argue with you.
No, I'm down, dude. I'm down. You know me. I'm down to have a good little argument.
It's fun. It brings good thought.
It does. It's a good exercise in thought, and it also proves that at the end of the day, we can walk away. We can still be friends. I have the utmost respect for you still, even though we disagree.
Shines. Now you, on the other hand.
No, that's cool. Like you say, I still respect you. My respect for you has nothing to do with how you feel about me.
I love you guys more than anything.
Yeah,
I know it, man. Okay, now we're getting soft again. Let's talk comic books, man. I can get it. We're not doing Oprah on here, man.
No, we're not giving away any free shit.
No, I'm giving away comic books. I'm giving away comic books if people will help us build the listenership of the program. So I will give you free stuff, but you got to do what I tell you to do to get your free stuff. You got to earn it. Anyway, let's talk about this Oblivion song. Like you say, it's Universal Pictures is who's helping them develop it. The focus that I want to focus on more than any of that, because being in development is, I have found out through various sources, almost anybody can, quote, be in development. It really depends on who you're in development with. But Universal Pictures, that's a legit place to be in development with. I'm curious to know if you guys have any ideas for some spec books for Oblivion song. Obviously, the number one is at the top of everybody's list. How familiar are you guys with the variations on Oblivion song number one?
Variations, not so much. I mean, they started out with the pink and the green issues there at the first, and then I think the pink was that was hot first.
It was,
and then everybody kind of found out that it was just kind of a 50-50 thing. I don't think there was one more. And you said we kind of argued about that pre-show, but I don't know there's any more than the other. That's what's weird about it.
Current fair market value, there's about a $5 difference in favor of the pink signature. Now you and I both know that a $5 difference in the grand scheme of things
grab both of
could
them
be.
now.
The main thing is grab both of those now. Those are two that are obtainable. $20-$25 is where you're going to be at on both of those for really good copies of them. Obviously not graded 9.8s. Those are going to be higher, but the real winners for this is if you still have a comic shop that is selling the Oblivion Song statue that they produced 1,000 of, in there is a first print, and it is embossed and has a silver Oblivion Song title to it. That's one of the big winners right there. But you're likely already going to end up paying up in the $200 to $300 range for that raw already. Like without any further things, any further rumors, $200 to $300. And at that point, you might as well see if you can buy the statue, and it comes with a few other things like an enamel pin. Which, if you don't collect enamel pins, send me the Oblivion Song enamel pin. I'll wear it gladly. But I think the statue initially was like $300 or $400 for the statue initially too, and it's not small. It is a large statue. That's one of the big winners if this movie comes out and is successful. And there's one other one that is, it's not as much a comic book as it is it's basically a trade paper. I don't know if you guys, what's that now?
Are you talking about the one that came out like a year before? I mean,
it was like 3 months beforehand. 3 months beforehand, they sent out a preview of the first 5 issues.
You know, I think all that's it was big money to begin with, big money now. You know, I mean, some of the variants and stuff like that, I'm sure that's going to bring the top dollar. But I mean, as far as the general collector, I think the best thing I could suggest is buy the pink and the green, and boom,
be done.
That on it, yeah.
That's not a bad way to go at all. You're getting the same story.
Don't lose too much.
Right. And just so we're all aware too, technically that 5-issue preview technically is marked as not for sale. So if you're picking that up, you know that they're technically not supposed to be selling it. But let's be real, dude. How many times you go and find not for resale in dollar bins and all this other stuff? That's kind of one of those wink and a nod, we're going to turn a blind eye to it kind of things.
And let's face it, I mean, what's the CGC and people like that going to recognize the first appearance as? It's going to be the first issue. I mean, pink, green, you name it. So, I mean, I think if you got both those, they may eventually recognize them both separately, like the matte edition, like of Rise Zero, matte and glossy. I mean, CGC may recognize them both separately, and there may be different values there, just like that book. But I figure that it's going to fall somewhere like that.
Yeah. Well, and now this is the other thing that I want to warn people about. And Robert Kirkman is he's a special kind of dude. Is the nice way of saying it. He did secret variations on comic books for not every issue of the run, but there are 2 or 3 future issues in the run that have. One of them was called the Secret Frog variant. And you look at it, and I don't have a picture, and I don't have it pulled out. I should have pulled it out. But essentially a very green sky background, and then undergrowth underneath, and branches kind of coming and forming together. And on this one little branch here, there's a little tiny, super neon green, like really like banging green here, frog-looking monster thing. But it was on like every 3rd or every 4th issue. And so that one gets a little bit of a bump in premium. Now there again, I don't know. I'm trying to think if there was a first appearance in there. And I think it might have been the main character's brother.
About that run, there's not a whole lot of, I mean, you know, there's the main characters and there's some first appearance of his brother, that kind of thing. I don't mean spoiler alert, but
yeah,
there's not a whole lot. I mean, what I've read, there's not a whole lot of big first appearances that you know of, obviously.
Right.
Matter.
Yeah, or that matter. So I don't know where it's going yet.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
pretty early in the run. you
Yeah,
know?
it's kind of like The Walking Dead. It's
It's kind of a slow burn comic anyway, but I mean it's fantastic even on the idea on the surface. But I like it anyway.
yeah, it's a good
Oh, yeah.
story, but it's like you got the first appearance of Dale, right, from Walking Dead, and then he dies like 7 issues later. I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of what Oblivion Song.
You don't know
Kinda
who's
feels like
going to
at this
be
point.
valuable exactly. I mean, it's kind of hard
So
to speculate on.
you got Rick Grimes in issue number 1, but then who cares about the next?
And then you got Glenn on what I can't even remember what issue he appeared in. It's the first few issues, but I mean, outside of that, I mean, you don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to speculate other than the first issue at this point.
Right. Well, and that's kind of what I mean by Robert Kirkman as a special kind of dude, because, like you say, it really, truly, if you want to cover all the bases, you better get in on Oblivion Song right now. Get as many of the back issues as you possibly can, as close to cover price as you can. Or if you can find them cheaper, but to be honest with you, they're kind of going the same way as the Walking Dead comics are. I don't find many of those in dollar bins, if any, in dollar bins. You're finding them in back issues, but you're paying cover price on them, like, period. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts. Shops are not down. Shops are not, and it's been out over a year now. So you would think if they were going to break some of them down, number 3, number 4 might show up in dollar bins, and
There's no historical reason why they should bring them down. I mean, really,
Right.
I mean, they're not elevating in price, but they're not bringing them down either because people want them.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, well, hopefully he learns his lesson from Walking Dead. I mean, and develops his story so that it doesn't get to a point where it's flat. Because like Walking Dead kind of got to a point where, okay, we're doing the same thing over and over again. We got a villain, we fight the villain. We got a new villain, we fight the villain, but it's pretty much the same. It's the same story over and over.
Same formula.
And I mean,
I think it's
the Walking Dead would come to an end personally. I mean, I just wish that it would come to its conclusion just so I could say, okay, that's the end of the story. How did this happen? And Robert Kirkman, I don't know if he's ever going to do that. But.
No, you're never going to find out the how. It's never going to end that way. I think he's actually said that.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's the only thing I want to know.
And that's the hook. I think
yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not reading. I just want to know now how it started.
Right.
Now,
well,
I just want to tell you guys, I just took a quick look, at online. Those comics you could still get at cover. Maybe not all the variants. Obviously, you talked about, the statue one, but just the standards. They're all still cover price online.
Right.
So that's a good spec right there. You can, if you didn't get it.
Yeah, if you didn't get it now, and like I say, my main thing that I would be concerned about though is, like you say, I would be checking in CLZ. You guys know I'm a big proponent of CLZ. 2 apps I think every collector should have: CLZ for their actual inventory of what they actually have, and then Key Collector. Those are the 2 that you should be in. And the great thing about like Key Collector, the other Nick that runs Key Collector, he had Oblivion Song number 1 on Key Collector, but he didn't have the variations of the pink signature and the chromed out. And all it took was a quick little instant message: hey man, you might just double check on these, because I know 100% these are variants for it. Let's just so you know, you might check and see what they're doing online too. But the reason I say check in CLZ is CLZ is more likely to actually give you not just the keys, but all the variations of the other books for Oblivion Song. And I haven't looked that up yet, but I can here real quick. And just to be sure that they do have the variants there. Yeah, the Secret Frog variant is there. for number 4. They've got second printings in there already. They do have the deluxe. So I'm sorry, I'm showing it off, and my brightness is up where it's not gonna show off. But it's got all the variations of number 1. It's got the second printings. It's all there, man. So a good idea, like Nick was saying, get on it now, get in on the ground floor and get all the variations.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you might as well at cover price. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think the pink is going to be a little bit more, but all the the chrome or whatever, white, I don't know that's still cover price, and you can't beat it.
That chrome one, the deluxe edition. The deluxe edition is like.
Was that the one in the statue, or?
That's the one in the statue.
Ah, okay.
That's the one in the statue.
That I actually looked at. Yeah, that I couldn't see. I saw 170, and by the time I got to it, it was gone. So it's
yeah. If you're getting it at $170, that's actually a steal at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I'm at as far as like giving guys what could be winners for Oblivion Song. I hate to say it that way, but might as well get in on all of them. If you're getting them at cover price, get all of them. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. There are only 22 books total so far, but that's including the deluxe edition. So if you get 21 of them, you're not doing too bad. So anyway, those were the 3 topics I had for us for this evening. Anybody want to go back and retouch on any of those? Anybody feel like they didn't get their say-so on Rob Liefeld or Lobo?
I'm good.
Well, I tell you what, let's do our final thoughts, man. I've had a good time talking to you guys, but it's one of those deals where we start getting into the 2-hour mark, and we might lose a few listeners here and there. They may not be willing to stick it out. So, Nikki, why don't you start us out with your final thoughts? Just let her rip, man.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the key things that I've come to do is just widen my spectrum of what I look at when I look to spec, or even just for a good story. Because you know what? We talk about spec a lot, but there are sometimes you just want to read a good story. So I've opened up to, like I said, I grew up, I was a Marvel kid, I was a Marvel guy, DC later in life, Image. I mean, I'm into Lady Death now, and Cough and I'm into like all these different things, for either a good story or a good piece of art. So I think that's the bottom line here is, keeping it fun, keeping it real, and hey, if you could flip something along the way, so be it. Or if you could get a good story that makes you, have an emotional response, well, good as well. So as far as Liefeld, I think that it kind of goes right with him. I mean, there's definitely an emotional response, good, bad, or ugly, when you talk about Liefeld. So, and more Lobo. Whatever they do, more Lobo.
That is a good take, man. That is a good take. Josh Sheldon, I don't know how you're going to follow that up, man. Give us some final thoughts here.
My final thought is exactly what I said earlier. Rob Liefeld may not be the guy you want, but he's the heel you need. That's my final word.
That's awesome, dude. And you may have swayed me a little bit in that argument. So that I'm telling you, just to sway me a little bit on Rob Liefeld.
Rob Liefeld comes out and attacks Hulk Hogan. You love it.
With a chair. So my final thought is completely unrelated to the show. Completely. Earlier this week, a childhood hero of mine passed away. A local entertainer by the name of Wayne Milnes. Nobody will know who that guy is. But as a small child, he was after school must-see TV for everybody of my generation. If you were going to watch He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers, those shows, you were watching it through the Sammy B. Good show, and it's sad to lose that part of your childhood, but it's also encouraging because all of my childhood friends, we've all started talking a little bit again, and being more friendly than we have been in years, and it's all based off of our memories of this man. So, regardless of whose life you touch, this guy touched a lot of lives, and I think that it's good to bring up a guy like that, because it is, and I'm getting a little emotional. I try not to do that, but he brought a lot of laughs to people. He entertained a lot of people, and he'll be missed.
Well said, John.
That's all I got for you guys. Todd, you want to take us out of here, man?
Yeah, I have no final thoughts. My final thought is we've talked long enough, and it's time to go to bed. Thanks everybody for joining us. Nick, it was great having you on here. Josh.
Thanks for letting me argue with you guys.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was a fun show. We got to argue, talk. Everybody got their words in. So thank you everybody for joining us. Check us out every week. And peace out, everybody. All right, so I'm going to hit the stop record, and we are good to go.
We're good.